There is a quote that has followed one footballer for his entire career. Watch him for 5 minutes and you won't see him. Watch the entire game and you won't understand how you missed him. But here is what that quote leaves out. The man it describes was the slowest player on the pitch in almost every game he ever played. Defenders jogged past him. Wingers left him standing. And yet Pep Guardiola said that without him, the entire system that dominated world football for a decade would not have existed. So how does the slowest player on the field become the most important one? This is how the slowest player ever outplayed everyone. To understand how Busquets became Busquets, you need to understand the factory that built him. La Masia is Barcelona's youth academy, and calling it a youth academy is like calling the Vatican a small church. It is the single most influential talent development system in football history. Messi came through it, Xavi came through it, Iniesta came through it, Puyol, Fabregas, Pedro, Piqué. The list goes on so long it starts to feel like a Wikipedia vandalism. But here is the thing about La Masia that most people miss. It was never designed to find the fastest players, or the strongest, or even the most naturally talented. It was designed to find the smartest. Players who understood space. Players who could read the geometry of a football pitch the way a chess grandmaster reads a board. Players who saw the game not as a collection of individual moments, but as a continuous flowing system of cause and effect. Sergio Busquets Burgos was born on July 16, 1988, in Sabadell, a city about 20 kilometers from Barcelona. His father, Carles Busquets, was a professional goalkeeper who had actually played for Barcelona in the 1990s, so football was not a foreign language in the household. It was a family business. Young Sergio joined La Masia as a teenager, and almost immediately, the coaches noticed two things about him. The first was that he was slow, genuinely, properly, almost concerningly slow. In a sport increasingly obsessed with pace and power, this boy moved like he was on a different clock. Not a slower clock, exactly, just a different one. The second thing they noticed was that he almost never lost the ball, and he almost never needed to sprint to win it back from someone else. This was the paradox that would define his entire career. He was too slow to chase, so he learned to never need to. He could not outrun opponents, so he outthought them instead. While other midfielders relied on explosive bursts to recover from bad positioning, Busquets simply positioned himself correctly in the first place, every single time. The coaches at La Masia saw something in this gangly, unhurried teenager that most scouts would have dismissed. They saw a player who had already solved the hardest problem in football before anyone had even asked him the question. The problem was this. In the middle of the pitch, between defense and attack, there is a position that requires you to process more information per second than any other on the field. The defensive midfielder. You need to know where your centre-backs are, where the opposition forwards are, where the passing lanes open, where they close. You need to anticipate what is about to happen 3, 4, or 5 seconds from now, because by the time it actually happens, it is too late. Most players use their legs to solve this problem. They run to where the danger is. Busquets used his brain. He was already there. And La Masia, that quiet factory of footballing intelligence, recognized this for exactly what it was. Not a limitation, a superpower in disguise.
Hey everyone! This video is sponsored by OK Jersey, rated an impressive 4.5 stars on Trustpilot. Fans love them for high-quality jerseys, great prices only £15, and super fast delivery. They offer a huge selection of new season, retro, and even upcoming World Cup kits. Use code MAUS at checkout to get 8% off your order. Don't wait, go check them out.
In the summer of 2008, Barcelona appointed Pep Guardiola as their new manager. This was, by any reasonable standard, a gamble. Guardiola had never managed a top-flight team. His only experience was coaching Barcelona B, the reserve team in the 3rd division of Spanish football. He was 37 years old, and he had just walked into one of the most high-pressure jobs in world sport. But Guardiola had a vision, a very specific, almost obsessive vision for how football should be played. Short passes, total control of the ball, positional play so precise that every player on the pitch knew exactly where every other player should be at every moment. The idea was not new. It had its roots in Johan Cruyff's Barcelona of the early 1990s, in the Dutch concept of total football, in the philosophical belief that football was not a game of running, it was a game of thinking. There was just one problem. This system, which would come to be known as tiki-taka, needed a very specific type of player at its center. Not a destroyer, not a water carrier, not a typical defensive midfielder who won headers and crunched into tackles. It needed someone who could receive the ball under pressure, turn, find the right pass, and recycle possession with metronomic consistency. Someone who could be the system's heartbeat without anyone noticing their pulse. Guardiola looked at Barcelona's squad. He had Xavi, the orchestrator. He had Iniesta, the magician. He had Messi, the alien. He had Eto'o and Henry, world-class strikers. He had Puyol and Piqué at the back. But he was missing the pivot. The one player who would sit in the space between defense and midfield, absorb pressure, and keep the entire machine ticking. Without this player, the system would collapse like a bridge with no foundation. He found his answer in the B team, a 19-year-old who moved like a treacle and played like a supercomputer. Guardiola promoted Sergio Busquets to the first team for the 2008-09 season. It was not a popular decision. Barcelona fans were expecting a statement signing, a Galactico, a headline name. Instead, they got a teenager from the reserves who looked, when placed alongside Xavi and Iniesta, like someone who had won a competition to train with the first team for a day. And then, the season started, and something extraordinary happened. Barcelona won everything, not some things, everything. La Liga, the Copa del Rey, the Champions League, the Supercopa de España, the UEFA Super Cup, the FIFA Club World Cup. 6 trophies in a single calendar year, a sextuple. It had never been done before in the history of European football. It has never been done since. And at the center of all of it, sitting in the space between Piqué and Xavi, like a man calmly directing traffic at the busiest intersection in the world, was Busquets. The pundits were confused. The scouts were confused. Even some of the fans were confused. How was this kid playing every week? He was the slowest player on the pitch in almost every match. He was not scoring goals. He was not beating defenders with skill moves. He was not doing anything that looked, to the untrained eye, remotely impressive. But here is what he was doing. He was receiving the ball in the tightest spaces on the pitch, with opponents pressing from every angle and turning out of danger with a single body feint that made the pressing player look foolish. He was reading opposition attacks before they developed, stepping into passing lanes and intercepting balls that nobody else on the pitch had even seen coming. He was distributing possession with a pass completion rate that bordered on the absurd. He was, in other words, making the entire team better by doing things that did not show up on highlight reels. The ultimate paradox. The invisible man at the center of the most visible success in club football history. Guardiola knew exactly what he had. The best player in the world in his position. He called Busquets. Not one of the best, the best. And when pressed on how a player so slow could be so essential, Guardiola said something that became the defining analysis of Busquets' career. He said that Busquets played at a speed that was different from everyone else. Not faster, not slower, just different. He processed the game in a way that made physical speed irrelevant. The universe, apparently, had decided that the greatest midfield in football history would be anchored by the slowest man on the field, and it had a sick sense of humor about the whole thing. If Busquets' club career was the quiet proof, his international career was the amplifier. Because of what he did at Barcelona, he did it for Spain. And what Spain achieved between 2008 and 2012 was, without exaggeration, the most dominant period in the history of international football. Euro 2008, World Cup 2010, Euro 2012. 3 consecutive major tournament victories. No nation had ever achieved this before. No nation has achieved it since. It was total, absolute, historically unprecedented dominance, and the football world struggled to even describe what it was watching. Spain's system was, at its core, Barcelona's system with different badges. Tiki-taka, possession football, short passes played at dizzying speed, suffocating opponents into submission, not through physicality, but through sheer, relentless control. You could not attack what you could not have, and Spain had the ball roughly 70% of the time. Busquets was the anchor, the pivot, the player around whom everything else rotated. At the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, the world got its clearest look at the Busquets phenomenon. Spain's path to the final was not smooth. They lost their opening match to Switzerland, a result that sent shockwaves through the tournament. But from that moment forward, Spain did not lose again. They ground through the group stages, navigated a brutal knockout bracket, and arrived at the final against the Netherlands. That final, played on 11th July 2010 at Soccer City in Johannesburg, was one of the most violent World Cup finals ever played. The Netherlands came out with a strategy that could be charitably described as aggressive, and more accurately described as criminal. There were 14 yellow cards, 1 red. Nigel de Jong famously kung fu kicked Xabi Alonso in the chest and somehow stayed on the pitch. It was chaos, and through all of it, Busquets played like a man in a different dimension. While the Dutch were hacking and kicking and turning the final into a war zone, Busquets kept receiving the ball, kept turning, kept finding the right pass. He was fouled repeatedly. He was targeted deliberately. The Dutch knew that if they disrupted Busquets, they disrupted Spain's entire system. So they tried to kick him out of the game. It did not work. In the 116th minute of extra time, with the score still locked at 0, Iniesta scored the goal that won Spain their first ever World Cup. The ball had come through midfield. Through Busquets' midfield, the invisible man had delivered the ball to the visible hero. The pattern of his entire career, distilled into one single moment. 2 years later, at Euro 2012 in Poland and Ukraine, Spain did something that defied comprehension. They did not just win the tournament, they annihilated it. They beat Italy 4-0 in the final, 4-0 in a European Championship final. It was the most dominant performance in the history of the competition. And once again, Busquets was there, sitting in his position, doing his job, making the machine hum. 3 trophies in 4 years, a generation of Spanish football that will likely never be matched. And through every single match, every single tournament, the slowest man on the pitch was the one holding everything together. He was right, the gods were listening, and they had a sick sense of humor. So what exactly was Busquets doing that nobody could see? This is the question that haunted football analysts, commentators, and rival coaches for the better part of 15 years. And the answer, like the man himself, is deceptively simple. He was thinking faster than everyone else on the pitch. That is it. That is the entire secret. But let me break that down, because thinking fast sounds like a motivational poster. What Busquets actually did was far more sophisticated than that. First, there was his positioning. In football analytics, there is a concept called spatial awareness, which is a polite way of saying knowing where to stand. Most midfielders learn positioning through experience. They play hundreds of matches, make thousands of mistakes, and gradually develop an instinct for where to be. Busquets appeared to have been born with this instinct pre-installed. He was always in the right place. Not almost always, not usually, always. Watch any Busquets match from above, from the tactical camera angle, and you will see something that looks almost choreographed. As the ball moves, Busquets shifts, not dramatically, not sprinting, just adjusting. A step to the left, 2 steps back, a slight drift toward the center. Each micro movement closes a passing lane, covering a centre-back, opening a receiving option for a teammate. It looked like nothing. It was everything. Then there was his body orientation. This is the detail that separated Busquets from every other defensive midfielder in the world. Before he received the ball, he would scan the pitch. Not once, not twice. Studies by Barcelona's own analytics department found that Busquets would scan his surroundings up to 40 times per match. Each scan lasted less than a second. A quick glance over his shoulder, a head turn to check the pressing angle. By the time the ball arrived at his feet, he already knew where every single player was, where they were going to be in 2 seconds, and exactly which pass would do the most damage. This is why that famous body feint worked so well. You have seen it, even if you did not know what you were looking at. An opponent charges toward Busquets, pressing hard. Busquets receives the ball, drops his shoulder one way, and turns the other. The presser lunges at empty space. Busquets is already facing forward, ball at his feet, picking out a pass. It looked like a magic trick. It was mathematics. He had already calculated the press angle, the escape route, and the next pass before the ball had even arrived. His interceptions worked the same way. While other defensive midfielders won the ball through pace and aggression, charging in, sliding, tackling, Busquets won it through prediction. He did not need to be fast because he did not need to react. He had already anticipated. The ball was coming down a passing lane that Busquets had closed 3 seconds before the pass was even made. To the opposition, it felt like running into a wall that should not have been there. And then there was his passing. Busquets' pass completion rates over his career were consistently above 90%, 90%, in the most pressured position on the pitch. He did not just keep the ball, he progressed it. Short passes that broke pressing lines, switches of play that opened up the opposite flank, disguised through balls that turned defense into attack in a single touch. The irony, the beautiful, almost poetic irony of it all, is that Busquets was doing the hardest job on the pitch while making it look like he was doing nothing. The better he played, the less you noticed him. The more dominant he was, the more invisible he became. He was the reverse highlight reel, the anti-Ronaldo, the player you could only appreciate by understanding everything you were not seeing. For his enemies, this was maddening. For his coaches, it was poetry. But it was not all standing ovations and tactical poetry, because here is the uncomfortable truth about being an invisible genius. People have to be able to see you to appreciate you. And for much of his career, a significant portion of the football world simply did not see Busquets. The criticism followed him like a shadow. He was too slow. He could not play in a team that did not dominate possession. He was a system player, which, in football discourse, is a polite way of saying he would be exposed anywhere else. Pundits, who built their analysis around goals and assists, looked at Busquets' stat sheet and saw nothing worth talking about. He was not in Ballon d'Or conversations. He was rarely in Team of the Year selections. In an era that worshipped Ronaldo's goals, Messi's dribbles, and Neymar's flair, Busquets offered nothing for the highlight packages. And then there was the diving. Let us not pretend this does not exist. Busquets had a reputation for going to ground easily, for embellishing contact, for the kind of theatrical falling that makes neutral fans roll their eyes. There was one incident against Inter Milan in 2010, a Champions League semi-final, where Busquets went down clutching his face after minimal contact. As the stretcher arrived, cameras caught him peeking through his fingers to see if the referee had given a card. It was, to put it mildly, not his finest moment. The internet never forgot it. The memes were immediate and merciless. But here is the thing about the diving narrative. It became the only thing some people associated with him. For a generation of casual football fans, Busquets was the guy who dived, not the guy who made the greatest team in history function. The caricature swallowed the career. The 30-second clip eclipsed 15 years of footballing genius. And as the years went on, the game changed around him. Football got faster, more physical, more athletic. The Premier League's relentless pressing game became the dominant model, and analysts questioned whether a player like Busquets could survive in a league that demanded constant sprinting, constant pressing, constant intensity. Barcelona's own dominance faded. The tiki-taka era gave way to a more transitional, vertical style. The team around Busquets aged and departed. Xavi left, Iniesta left, Messi eventually left, and yet Busquets remained. Season after season, manager after manager, he outlasted Luis Enrique, Ernesto Valverde, Quique Setién, Ronald Koeman, and Xavi's return as coach. He adapted, slightly. He could not reinvent himself as a pressing machine, because that would have required legs that his body simply did not possess. But he adjusted his game, dropping deeper, becoming even more of a metronome, compensating for the decline in the players around him by increasing the precision of his own contribution. It was not always enough. Barcelona's later years with Busquets were marked by Champions League collapses, by humiliating defeats, by the slow, painful erosion of a dynasty. And Busquets absorbed blame for some of those defeats that he probably did not deserve. When Barcelona lost 8-2 to Bayern Munich in 2020, the entire squad was at fault. But the camera found Busquets walking slowly through the wreckage, and the narrative wrote itself. Too slow, too old, too limited. He had spent 10 years proving he was the most intelligent player on the pitch. The football world, it seemed, had not been paying attention. Emphasis on seemed. In the summer of 2023, after 15 years and over 700 appearances for FC Barcelona, Sergio Busquets left. Not with a trophy, not with a dramatic final match, just quietly, the way he had done everything. He packed up his locker, said his goodbyes, and walked away from the only club he had ever known. He joined Inter Miami in Major League Soccer, reuniting with Lionel Messi, Jordi Alba, and the ghosts of a dynasty that had changed football forever. It was, in many ways, the perfect final chapter. A quieter stage, a slower pace, a league where his brain could still dominate, even as his legs offered even less than they had before, which, given how little they had offered at Barcelona, was saying something. But the departure triggered something unexpected. People started talking about Busquets, really talking about him, not about the diving, not about the slowness, but about the football. Compilation videos of his best moments, the turns, the interceptions, the passes that broke pressing lines started circulating. Analysts published breakdowns, former teammates gave interviews, and the consensus slowly, grudgingly, but unmistakably shifted. He was not just good, he was generational, a once-in-a-lifetime player disguised as a once-a-week jogger, the man who made tiki-taka possible, the man who anchored 3 consecutive international tournament victories, the man who played over 700 matches for Barcelona and made it look, every single time, like he was barely trying. Because that was the final joke. The ultimate cosmic irony of Sergio Busquets' career. The better he was, the less effort it looked like he was putting in. The more he dominated, the more invisible he became. And the football world, which worships speed and power and spectacle, spent 2 decades watching the slowest player on the pitch quietly outplay everyone around him and did not fully understand what it was seeing until it was gone. Watch him for 5 minutes and you will not see him. Watch the entire game and you will not understand how you missed him. That was the quote. It was always the quote, and it was always the truth. Sergio Busquets did not beat the system. He did not overcome his limitations through grit or willpower or some inspirational montage. He simply understood from the very beginning that football is not a foot race. It is a chess match played on grass. And in that chess match, the man who thinks 3 moves ahead does not need to be fast. He just needs to be there. He was always there. And that, somehow, was the most extraordinary thing of all. If this story made you appreciate the art of the invisible, you are going to want to see what happens when that same invisible intelligence meets its opposite. A player built entirely on speed, power, and spectacle. That video is on screen now. If you want to follow the story of how a winger who couldn't do stepovers became the greatest player ever, check out our video here.